On a gray morning in March of 2019, in a small fleet depot on the edge of Nagoya, I watched a mechanic back a Toyota pickup into a service bay and shift it through every gear like he was testing a brand new truck off the lot. The shifts were crisp. No hunting, no flare, no shudder. Then he pointed at the odometer, and I leaned in to read a number that did not make sense for a working truck. Well past 400,000 kilometers, and the automatic transmission inside it had never been rebuilt. Not once. Today, I am revealing the single, quiet habit behind trucks like that one, a habit almost nobody in North America is taught, that costs less than one tank of gas, and that quietly carries a Tacoma past 400,000 miles while the trucks around it die at half that distance with a transmission you could have saved for $40. Here is the part that bothered me for years after that morning in Nagoya. Back home, I had personally watched the exact opposite story play out over and over. A clean Tacoma rolls into my bay at around 130,000 miles. The body is straight. The engine is flawless. The owner changed the oil religiously, kept every receipt, babied the thing. And the transmission is finished. It slips under load, it flares between gears, and sometimes it throws the truck into limp mode on the highway. The owner is devastated because by every measure they did everything right, and they are about to be quoted $4,000 to $6,000 for a transmission in a truck whose engine could easily run another 200,000 miles. The cruel irony is that the engine was never the problem. On a Tacoma, the engine almost never is. The 2.7-liter four-cylinder and the 4.0-liter and 3.5-liter V6 engines Toyota put in these trucks are about as close to indestructible as anything ever bolted to a frame. People obsess over the engine, baby the engine, worship the engine. Meanwhile, the part that actually decides whether their truck reaches 400,000 miles or dies at 130,000 sites, underneath it, ignored, slowly cooking itself to death in silence. That part is the automatic transmission. And here is the uncomfortable truth almost no Tacoma owner is ever told. Open the owner's manual for most Tacomas and look for the transmission fluid. You will not find a change interval. Instead, you will find a single word, inspect, not change, inspect. And that one word has quietly ended more Tacomas than rust, accidents, and abuse combined. Because dealers read inspect as lifetime fill. Owners hear lifetime and assume it means forever. The fluid that lubricates, cools, and operates one of the most expensive components in the entire truck gets treated as a part you never have to touch. And the transmission inside is left to drink the same fluid for 150,000 miles, 200,000 miles, until the day it grenades. There is no such thing as lifetime transmission fluid. There never was. The word lifetime is doing something very specific in that sentence, and once you hear it correctly, you cannot unhear it. The fluid does have a lifetime. When that lifetime ends, so does the transmissions. They die together. Lifetime fluid is not a promise that you will never change it. It is a quiet prediction of when your transmission will fail. To understand why the Japanese habit works, you have to understand what is actually happening to that fluid every single mile you drive. Automatic transmission fluid is not just lubricant. It is hydraulic fluid that builds the pressure to engage the gears. It is the coolant that carries heat away from the clutches, and it is the friction medium that lets those clutches grab cleanly instead of slipping. It does 3 brutal jobs at once in one of the hottest environments in the entire vehicle, and it does them through a precise additive package that is being chemically consumed the whole time. And the enemy of that fluid is heat, not dramatic, catastrophic heat, ordinary, everyday heat. There is a well-known relationship technicians have used for decades at a steady fluid temperature of around 175 degrees Fahrenheit. Good transmission fluid can last roughly 100,000 miles. But for every 20 degrees you climb above that, the useful life of the fluid is cut roughly in half. At 195 degrees, you are looking at 50,000 miles. At 220 degrees, 25,000 miles. Push past 240 degrees and the fluid begins to oxidize and lay down varnish inside the transmission. Past 260 degrees, the internal seals start to harden and lose their grip. The numbers fall off a cliff, and they fall fast. Now think about what a Tacoma actually does for a living. It tows, it hauls, it crawls in stop-and-go traffic. It climbs grades in the heat with a loaded bed. Every one of those situations drives fluid temperature up exactly into the range where its life collapses. So that lifetime fluid that was supposedly good forever is, in the real world, quietly aging 2, 3, 4 times faster than anyone assumes. By 80,000 or 100,000 miles, the fluid in a hard-working Tacoma is not protecting anything anymore. It is brown, acidic, and thin. The additives are gone, and it is silently sandpapering the clutches every time you shift. Here is what makes this so dangerous, and it is the same thing I say about every silent killer in these trucks. The transmission does not warn you. There is no check engine light for tired fluid, no code, no dashboard message. The truck shifts fine, right up until the day it does not. The first real symptoms: a little hesitation on the 1 to 2 shift, a slightly harsh kickdown when you ask for passing power, a brief slip when you are climbing under load, feels so minor that most owners do not even register them. They blame the gas, they blame the weather, they blame high mileage. By the time the symptoms are obvious enough to act on, the damage is already done. The clutch material is in the pan, the transmission is already dying. This is exactly where the Japanese owner habit splits off from everything we do here, and it is so simple it almost feels like a trick. They never let the fluid get old in the first place. That is the entire secret. In Japan, fleet operators, taxi companies, and meticulous private owners do not treat transmission fluid as a lifetime fill, and they never have. They treat it like engine oil, a consumable that must be refreshed on a schedule before it degrades, not after the truck starts complaining. They do not wait for a symptom. They do not wait for permission from a vague line in a manual. They simply drain and refill a portion of the transmission fluid on a regular interval, year after year, so the fluid in the transmission is never allowed to become old, acidic, and worn out. The clutches always swim in fluid that still has its additives intact. The heat is always being carried away by fluid that can still carry it. The transmission never reaches the threshold where varnish forms, because the fluid is gone and replaced long before it gets there. It is not exciting. There is no special additive, no miracle product, no secret Japanese fluid you cannot buy. The fluid is ordinary Toyota World Standard automatic transmission fluid, the same WS fluid sold at every Toyota dealer on Earth. The habit is just discipline applied early and applied often. And that is precisely why it is so easy to dismiss and so devastating to skip. Now, here is where I have to be honest with you, because doing this wrong can cause the exact failure you are trying to prevent. The Japanese method works because it is gentle and consistent. A standard drain and refill on a Tacoma only removes around 4 quarts out of roughly 10 quarts. The rest stays trapped up in the torque converter. That sounds like a weakness, but it is actually the genius of it. You are not shocking the system. You are swapping out a portion of the fluid at a time, repeatedly. So the overall fluid stays fresh without ever dumping a violent change into the transmission all at once. Done every 30,000 to 60,000 miles from early in the truck's life, the fluid quality simply never has the chance to collapse. What you do not do, and this is critical, is take a truck that has run 180,000 miles on its original lifetime fluid and hit it with an aggressive high-pressure flush. On a neglected transmission, that old fluid and the worn clutch material it carries are, ironically, part of what is still letting a tired unit grab. Blast all of that out at once, force brand new high detergent fluid through hardened seals and varnished passages, and you can dislodge debris, change the friction characteristics overnight, and send a marginal transmission straight into failure within a few hundred miles. Then everyone blames the fluid change. The fluid change did not kill it. 200,000 miles of neglect killed it. The flush just pulled the trigger. This is the same principle I come back to again and again with these trucks. Maintenance is erosion, not explosion. Gentle and consistent beats aggressive and late every single time. If your Tacoma has high miles and you genuinely do not know whether the fluid has ever been changed, the safe move is a series of small drain and refills spaced out over time, not one violent flush. Let the good fluid work its way in gradually. Patience protects the transmission. Impatience destroys it. And here is the part that should make you a little angry, because it made me angry. None of this is hidden knowledge. Every competent transmission specialist knows that fluid dies with heat and miles. Toyota's own engineers know it. So why does the manual say inspect instead of giving you a clear change interval? Why does the dealer wave you off when you ask about the transmission fluid at 60,000 miles? I will not tell you every shop is acting in bad faith, because that is not true. But I will tell you the incentives are badly broken. A $40 drain and refill that quietly prevents a problem 15 years from now does not show up on a balance sheet. It does not move parts. It does not justify a big ticket. But a transmission that fails at 130,000 miles, that is a $4,000 to $6,000 repair, or a trade-in toward a brand new truck. The system is not built to keep your transmission alive forever. It is built around replacing it. The owner who quietly refreshes their own fluid every couple of years is invisible to that system. They never become a profitable repair. They just keep driving their Tacoma past 300,000, past 400,000, wondering why everyone else's trucks die so young. The drivers I have seen reach the highest mileage all share that same boring discipline. They stopped believing the word lifetime. They picked an interval, and they stuck to it. They used the correct Toyota WS fluid. Never a random universal substitute, because Toyota's transmissions are engineered around a specific fluid, and the wrong one alters how the clutches grab. And they did it early, while the transmission was still healthy, instead of scrambling to save it after the symptoms started. That is the whole habit. Refresh the fluid before it dies, gently, on a schedule, with the right fluid for the life of the truck. That is what was rolling around that depot in Nagoya at 400,000 kilometers, shifting like new. Not luck, not magic, not some unobtainable Japanese engineering secret, just an owner who refused to let the most expensive part of their truck drink dead fluid. So, before you accept that your transmission is just getting old, before you assume a high-mileage Tacoma is living on borrowed time, before you let a service writer tell you the fluid is fine because it is sealed for life, ask yourself one question: when was this fluid actually last changed? If the honest answer is never, you have not found a problem. You have found the single biggest opportunity to add 100,000 miles to your truck for the price of a tank of gas. Your engine was never going to be the thing that died. It was always the fluid you were told you never had to think about. If this changed the way you look at your transmission, hit that like button so more Tacoma owners see it before their fluid runs out of time. Subscribe. If you want me to keep pulling back the curtain on the quiet habits that separate the trucks that reach 400,000 miles from the ones that do not. And if you have ever saved a transmission or lost one, drop your mileage and your story in the comments, because those numbers help more people than you know. The most expensive part of any truck is the one you were told to ignore. Now you know exactly where to look.